Alright, friends. What's up? Ooh, the heat isn't on. I should probably turn on the heat. It might get cold over here. Although it was a nice day today, Lamaisa. Maybe I'll turn on the heat. Excuse me, 1 second. Alright, the heat's on, but it's going to take a few hours until it actually heats up because it's from the floor, So it's stone floors, so it takes a little bit of time. So I figure I should turn it on. So it might get cold overnight. Alright, friends, we're going weiter in Truma and Tumah and Tahara. And what do you want me to tell you? So we're talking about actually somewhere where Truma is actually more stringent than Kodesh. So some very exciting stuff. We're going to start on Daf Chof Daled Amud Beis, about 6 lines from the bottom, at the Mishnah. Chomer b'Truma. Now, there is a chumrah when it comes to truma, that in the following way, truma is more stringent than kodesh is. Of course, up until now, for the past few days, we've been talking about ways in which kodesh is more stringent than truma, but now we are going to discuss how truma is more stringent than kodesh. Shabi Yehuda ne'emanin al tyrus yayin v'shemen kol yemos hashana. That in Judah, and the Gemara is going to ask what's special about Judah and Yehuda, that in Yehuda, the people are believed when it comes to Kodesh, right? If they want to donate wine or oil to the temple the entire year, so if they say that it's pure, that it's tahor, so then the people, even in Am Haaretz, is believed. And when it comes to Truma, so they are believed to say that the truma is tahor during the time of when they press the grapes and when they press the olives. So during that time, everybody's got tahor vessels, and so then in Am Haaretz is believed during the pressing season to say that the wine and the oil is pure for truma, but the rest of the year they would not be believed when it comes to truma. However, when it comes to kodesh, the entire year, even in Am Haaretz would be believed to say that it's tahor. So in that sense, truma is more stringent. Avra agitos ve'abadim, if the pressing season of the wine and the oil passed, ve'viulo, and they brought to the Kohen chavis shel yayin shel truma, and in Am Haaretz, after the pressing season, brought to a Kohen a barrel of wine of truma, lo yikablena mimenu, the Kohen should not receive it from the Am Haaretz because it is no longer the pressing season. But the Am Haaretz can leave the barrel and, so that he could offer it to the Kohen in the following pressing season. But if the Am Haaretz says that it is not purely truma, there's actually a revius, there's a quarter of a log of kodesh in there, so then the Kohen can accept it because we said that you can accept kodesh all year round. Kada yain v'chadei shemen, when it comes to jugs of wine and jugs of oil, hamadumaos. The assumption, for friends, who can tell me what meduma is? So the assumption is that, meduma in general is a mixture of chulin and truma, right? So you have a whole bunch of chulin, and then some truma falls into it. Now it's a mixture. So if it is, if there is 1 to 100 parts of truma to chulin, so then you can't. A non-Kohen cannot eat it, right? So, for example, if you have chulin, 100 parts of chulin, wheat or something, I guess, and then, 100 stalks of chulin wheat, and then a stalk of truma wheat falls in there, so then, you have to treat it all as truma, but if you add another stock of chulin, so now it's 101 to 1, so then it would be bottle. But that's what meduma is. It's a mixture. So now, so hamadumaos, so when it comes to meduma, ne'emonin alein b'shas agitos, so then, where am I? So when it comes to meduma, right, when it comes to this mixture of truma and of chulin together, and we have to be concerned about the truma content in there. So then also the Amaretz is believed to say that it is tahor during the pressing season. However, right during the pressing season, or 70 days to the wine press before the wine presses, but any other time of the year, the Amaretz would not be believed about truma. So we see that in the context of truma, it's more stringent in that sense, in that when it comes to kodesh, a Amaretz is believed about the kodesh all year round, but when it comes to truma, it's only during the pressing season. Now, frag the Gemara. So now, frag the Gemara. Yehuda in uvegalil lo. You hear the question? The Mishnah had said specifically chomer b'truma should be chomer b'truma, that there's I'm reading the Mishnah, right? That there's a stringency when it comes to truma. Should be Yehuda ne'eman al tyrus yain b'shem koyim Moshe. That in Judah, in the area of Eretz Yisrael, the Judah, the Judean part of Eretz Yisrael, and Jerusalem is included in Yehuda. So in that part of Eretz Yisrael, so then the Amei Haaretz are believed about Kodesh all year round. So fact the Gemara Yehuda in Uvegalil lo sounds like, or maybe Taka statement Kilu Yehuda in Uvegalil lo, that Davka in Yehuda the Amei Haaretz are believed about Kodesh all year round, but not in Galil. My timer, how come? What's the difference? So Amar Rish Lakish, friends, listen very, very carefully, if you want to. Amar Rish Lakish says, Rish Lakish m'pnei she'yitzu shel kutim mafsekes b'neim. Ho 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 ho. Friends, you hear the kasha? Well, not a kasha, the statement that apparently that there was like a divider, right? You have the Galil in the north, and you have Yehuda where Jerusalem is. And then Rish Lakish says there was a strip that was like dividing the two areas of Kutim, of non-Jews, right? Kutim have their own kind of status, but yeah, it's not considered Eretz Yisrael. Apparently there was like a strip, dividing between Galil and Yehuda that was actually not technically part of Eretz Yisrael, and therefore, if you would pass from Galil to come to Yerushalayim, you would have to pass through this strip, which is not Eretz Yisrael, and would become Tomei. Right? As Rashi says in the last wide line of Rashi, it would be impossible to bring the Kodesh to Jerusalem from the Galil in a state of purity, and because the Chacham, the sages, they decreed impurity on the land of the nations, right? Eretz Ha'amim, and even if it comes from a chaver, right, not an Am Haaretz, right, even if it would come from anybody, from somebody who is trustworthy, nonetheless, the wine and the oil would have to pass through the Eretz Ha'amim, through this strip that belonged to the nations, and it would, and midrabanan, it would become tamei. So therefore, you would be unable to bring these yayin and shemen from the Galil to Yerushalayim. It would have to be from Yehuda, which is where Yerushalayim is, and you wouldn't have to pass through this strip of the Eretz Ha'amim. Very interesting. Frakti Gemara, v'naisu b'shida tevo migdal. Oh, so Frakti Gemara, but wait, bring it from the Galil, and when you pass through this strip that belongs to the nations, so then put the wine or the oil in a carriage, in a trunk, or in a closet. Keilu, cover it, right? Put it in some kind of a box of sorts, and then it won't become tamei. Right? Make sure it's like in some kind of a box, and then the impurity of the air in this strip of land will be unable to get to it. So Mani Rebbe, and for the Gemara, well, our Mishnah is Rebbe the Omar, who says Ohel Zaruk Lav Shmei Ohel, that a sort of like a movable tent is not really considered a tent, right? Meaning, if we want to say that we want to create like a separation, right, like a tent, so that it'll serve as like a separation, so that the tumah will be unable, the tumah of the land of the nations will be unable to get into this kodesh, this oil, this wine. But says Rabbi that an oil zaruk, sort of like a sort of, I don't know, separation, like, oil of course is a tent, so like, a different sort of area that is movable, that you can kind of throw around like a box, so it's not actually considered an oil, it wouldn't be considered a separate space, and therefore, it would not be considered a separate space, and therefore, it wouldn't work, right? So the suggestion to just put the oil or the wine in a box and then carry it to the Eretz Ha'amim that way, it's not going to work, because it's movable, and it's not an oil. Titania is learning about Nichnas le'Eretz Ha'amim. A fellow goes into the land of the nations, b'shida teva migdal, in a carriage, a trunk, or a closet. Rebbe Mitami. Rebbe says, forget about it. It's not going to work. It's not going to be considered like you're in a separate space. You're tameh. Yossi Bebuda Mitayr, whereas Rabbi Yossi Bebuda says, no, it's fine. It's considered a separate space, and the tumah can't affect you. So we're saying that our Mishnah is Rebbe, who says that an oil zaruk is not considered an oil, and that is why bringing oil and wine to the Beis Hamikdash is limited to Yehuda, where you don't have to pass through this strip of land of the nations, but in the Gola it would not be allowed, because the only way to be able to get it through would be through some kind of movable oil, which doesn't count as an oil. Friends, you hear the kasha. We learned the other day, right, that if you have a kli cheres, an earthenware vessel, we know that an earthenware vessel is unable to become tummy from the outside, only from the inside. So if you take an earthenware vessel, why don't you take the oil or the wine, put it in an earthenware vessel, seal the earthenware vessel, and then the tumah won't be able to get in. So take some wine, take some oil from the galil, pass it through the Eretz Ha'amim, but it'll be in an earthenware vessel, so the tumah will be unable to get in. Problem solved, right? Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer shonen that it was taught in a brisa in a kodesh nitzol b'tzamid pasul, that kodesh, which unfortunately for us in trying to find a solution over here, apparently when it comes to kodesh, you can't just put it into a earthenware vessel and seal it. That would not work. So if you put the oil or the wine into an earthenware vessel, you would not be able to pass it from the Galil to Yehuda through the lands of the nations. Alright? But 1 second, we're learning a Mishnah. Ein chatas nitzeles b'tzamid pasul. That mechatos, right? Water with the ashes of the paraduma, it cannot be saved by putting it into a earthenware vessel and sealing it, right? I mean, you might think that, okay, if I have to be concerned about, right, I have to be concerned about the mechatos becoming tameh, so I would think that, okay, maybe I could put it in an earthenware vessel, seal it. No, it doesn't work. My love, what does that imply? HaKodesh nitzel. So you want to say, okay, fine, so maybe mechatos, right, the ephah paraduma cannot be salvaged from in this kind of right, in an earthenware vessel that's sealed, but kodesh, if you have wine or oil, maybe that'll be fine. Right, a kodesh lo. Where am I? So my lab, a kodesh nitzol lo. So answer the Gemara, no. Hamayim she'enin mekudashim nitzolim b'tzamid pasul. No. Just like the ashes of the paraduma are unable to be sort of saved from, right, spared from impurity by putting it in a earthenware vessel and sealing it, so also kodesh, right, this wine, this oil that's meant for the Beis Hamikdash, is unable to be saved in a earthenware vessel that is sealed. What is able to be saved in that manner? Water. What did we say? We said hamayim she'enin mikudashim, just regular old water. So you could put that in an earthenware vessel, and then it'll be saved. What do you want me to tell you? Friends, should we move on? All right. V'al Omar Ula. And Ula says, so fact the Gemara, Amr Ula, but doesn't Ula say Chavai Madkan be Galila, that the Chaverim, right, people who are trustworthy about Trumas and stuff, So Madkam Bigalila, they're purifying like wine and oil in the Galil. So why would they be doing that if they're unable to bring it to Jerusalem? It sounds like it sounds like you would be able to bring this stuff to Jerusalem, right? As we say that the Chaverim in the Galil are taka purifying oil and wine and stuff. So, and for the Gemara, Manichnu Chshiavo Eliyahu V'Yitarenu. So, and for the Gemara, no, they're not actually bringing that wine and oil to Jerusalem because they would have to pass through the land of the nations. Rather, they are preparing it, putting it aside. And when Eliyahu Novu comes, so then he'll be Matar, Matar the land of the nations. And then, okay, fine, he'll figure, he'll show them how to get it to right, what does Rashi say? He'll show them a path that that you can get to Jerusalem without having to pass through the lands of the nations. Alright. What do you want me to tell you? It says the Gemara, B'shas Hagitos ne'emonin afal truma. Okay, fine. So we said in the Mishnah that the times of the pressing, the grape press, the olive press, so then Amaretz is believed even when it comes to Truma. In fact, the Gemara has the Kasha Viramini. 1 second, we have a Brisa, Agomer Zesav, that a fellow who finishes gathering his olives, so now, right, so it's the time of of pressing olives, pressing grapes, right, that season. So he finishes collecting his olives. So he could set aside one box, and that box will be for his truma, and he can give it then le'ani kohen, and there's another guy that says le'ene kohen, in the eyes of the kohen, kilu, that the kohen needs to see him, right, needs to see this box, right, i.e., that we cannot trust him. He's an Amoritz, right? We have to, right, the kohen has to know that this, that these olives are tahor. But 1 second, we said in our Mishnah that during the time of the pressing, right, of the olives, of the grapes, so we believe the Amoritz. Yet over here, we seem to be saying that he needs to separate his truma with it right in the eyes of the kohen, so that because we don't trust him. So Rav Nachman says, no kashitz, no problem, b'chayfe ba'afle. Depends if it's early or if it's late. Our Mishnah is saying that with the earlier crops, we could trust him. But this brisa, it says, dafka has to be in the eyes of the kohen, so that is talking about the, so then that's talking about the later crops after sort of the main pressing season. That is why, right, we can't trust him anymore, and it has to be in front of the kohen. Rav Ada bar Ahava Kagon Mai. So says Rav Ada bar Ahava to Rav Nachman. Right, so Rav Ada bar Ahava says to Rav Nachman Kagon Mai. What's considered, right, late olives? So Kosen Shabes Ovich. So says Rav Nachman, it's like the olives of your father. Alright, of your father's house. I guess his father's house had like late olives. Alright. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef b'Galila shanu. So Rav Yosef explains the difference between our Mishnah and this brisa by saying, or a Mishnah I guess, by saying that, well, when he's believed in our Mishnah, that's we said it's talking about Yehuda, right? It says Chomer b'Truma should be Yehuda ne'eman al taharas yaim v'shemen, etc. That our Mishnah is talking about Yehuda. So when we say that during the time of the harvest of the pressing, so then Amei Aretz are believed when it comes to Truma. So it says that specifically in Yehuda. Rav Yosef wants to say that this other Mishnah that says that dafka has to be in the eyes of the Kohen, that you separate the Truma because we don't trust the Amei Aretz. So that is in the Galil. So Eis ve'Abai, but Abai asks a kasha over Ever Yarden v'Galil Harein ki Yehuda. We have a brisa that says that the Ever Yarden, right, the other side of the Jordan, as well as the Galil, they are just like Yehuda. Ne'emanin al hayayin b'shas hayayin v'hashemen b'shas hashemen. In that they are believed about wine during the time of the wine press and the oil in the time of the olive press. Avalo al hayayin b'shas hashemen, but they are not believed for wine during the oil season, v'lo al hashemen b'shas hayayin, and not on the oil during the wine season. Fine. So we see that in this brisa we're saying that Yehuda, Galil, Ever Yarden, to all of the same halachis with regard to trusting in Amei Aretz, which is that we could trust the Amei Aretz for Truma when it's the grapes in the grape press season, the olives during the olive pressing season. So it is the same halachis. So therefore, there's no distinction, as Rav Yosef wants to say, between Yehuda and Galil, and therefore, rather it makes sense like Rav Nachman said, which is that the difference is the early crops and the later crops. When it comes to early crops, we can believe the Amoritz. When it comes to later crops, we cannot believe the Amoritz that the truma was separated purely, and therefore it has to be in the eyes of the kohen for the later crops. Okay, moving on. The Mishnah had said Avra Agitos v'abadim, that once the wine press and the olive pressing time passes, ve'viulo chovis shel yayin, and now they bring, and so now the Amoritz brings to the kohen a barrel of wine. Lo yikablen menu, the kohen should not accept it. Rather, the Amoritz should wait for the following year and then offer it then. So the Taka asked of Sheshis, what do you think they asked? Over v'kiblamau she'enichen legasaba. What if the kohen nonetheless accepted the truma after the time of the pressing? Can the kohen then just kind of wait, set it aside and wait until the following year and consume it then? Amalu. So Rav Shesha says, listen up, Tinisua, that we have a Mishnah. Okay, what does the Mishnah say? Let's see. Chover v'amaretz sheyoshus aviyam amaretz. Okie dokie. You have Yaakov. Yaakov was an Amaretz. Yaakov has two children, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven is a chover, right? He's trustworthy when it comes to Truma. Shimon is an Amaretz. Okay, fine. So again, so chover v'amaretz. So Reuven the chover and Shimon the Amaretz, sheyoshus aviyam amaretz, that they inherited their father Yaakov the Amaretz. Yachol Omar lo. So Reuven the chover could say to Shimon the Amaretz, Tol ata chitin shebemakom ploni vani chitin shebemakom ploni. So Reuven the chover could say to Shimon the Amaretz, he could say, look, our father Yaakov the Amaretz gave us a whole bunch of wheat. Okay? A whole bunch of wheat. So Reuven the chover could say to himself, look, I know that 50% of it is tahor, and 50% of it is potentially tumah. Right? Our father was an Amaretz, right? As Rashi says, right, part of it was not muksher the kabel tumah. It's unable to, right? It didn't become wet. It's not able to become tumah. Whereas part of it was able to become tumah. We have to assume that it is tumah because Yaakov the father was an Amaretz. So Reuven, basically, he could say, right, Reuven the chover could say, look, our father left us a whole bunch of wheat. He says to himself, I know that 50% of it is Torah, 50% of it is questionable. So therefore, he could suggest, I'm going to take the Tahor portion, and you, Shimon the Amaretz, you could take the questionable stuff. So again, chover v'amaretz, Reuven the chover and Shimon the Amaretz, sheyoshus aviyam amaretz, that they inherited their father Yaakov the Amaretz. Yachol lomar lo, Reuven the chover could say to Shimon the Amaretz, Tol ata chitin sheb'makom ploni, look, you take the wheat in such and such a place. Reuven the chover is saying this knowing that wheat is questionable. V'ani, but I, chitin sheb'makom ploni, I'll take this other wheat. And, he knows that is tahor wheat, so he can kind of just take those. And that's fine. Tol ata yain sheb'makom ploni, v'ani yain sheb'makom ploni. And he could say also, Reuven the chover could say to Shimon the Amaretz, look, our father left us a whole bunch of wine. Why don't you take that wine? And I'll take this wine, right? Why don't you take the wine, and he knows that it's questionable wine, and I'll take this other wine that he knows is Torah wine. Aval. So in those cases it's fine. Aval lo yomar lo, but Reuven the chover should not say to Shimon the Amaretz, Tol ato lach va'ani yovesh. Right? If you have, let's say, wheat and you have barley, so, and the wheat was moist, let's say, and the barley was dry. Now, Reuven the Chaver would prefer the barley that's dry, because of course, as we've learned, it's come up a few times recently, that as long as in this example, barley, as long as it's remained dry, so then it's not able to become tumah. But if it was moist, then it would be. So the wheat, let's say, is moist, and the barley is dry. So Reuven is unable to say, look, Shimon the Amaretz, why don't you take all of the wheat? And I, Reuven the Chaver, I'll take all of the barley. That he would be unable to do. Tolata chitin vani sorim, right? He can't say, why don't you, Shimon the Amaretz, take the wheat and I'll take the barley, right? And Rashi points out that it's a question of breira, right? Of course, we've learned about breira in the past, right? Like photoshopping, that kilu, if Yaakov the Amaretz, the father, left like a whole bunch of just wheat, so Memela, Reuven's going to get 50% of the wheat, Shimon's going to get 50% of the wheat. So Reuven could suggest to Shimon that Shimon takes, the part that's questionable, that Reuven knows is questionable, and Reuven the Chaver says that, he'll reserve for himself the part that he knows is tahor. And that would be fine, because it's all wheat. Memele, Reuven is going to get 50% of the wheat, Shimon is going to get 50% of the wheat. So we could say that Reuven could choose which 50% he wants, and then Memele, whatever he got, we can say retroactively that was the part that was rightfully his the entire time, that he was always supposed to get that part. However, when it comes to, if Yaakov the Amaretz left as an inheritance for Reuven and Shimon, his children, some wheat and some barley, well then technically really 50% of the wheat belongs to Reuven, 50% of the wheat belongs to Shimon, right? 50% of the barley belongs to Reuven, 50% of the barley belongs to Shimon. Reuven cannot simply say, look, I'll take the barley, you take the wheat. It doesn't work like that, because 50%, right? Really, it's 50% is Reuven's, 50% is Shimon's of each thing, and therefore we can't go back and say breira. Fine. Now, V'tani Allah, and it was taught also Chaver, that Reuven the Chaver soref halach umaniach es hayavish. So what does he do, right? In a situation where the wheat is moist and the barley is dry, and he's going to get 50% of the moist wheat and 50% of the dry barley. So what can he do with the wheat? So he can burn it, right? The moist wheat that he has to be concerned that maybe it's tameh, so he can nonetheless burn it. So I just looked it up, and apparently the moist is actually talking about liquids, right? And also we're talking about truma. So basically, if let's say Yaakov, the father, the Amaretz, left over some like truma oil, so then and of course it's moist, which means that it's able to become tameh. So you have to be concerned that it is tameh. So let's say, so he has the lach and the yavish, right? So let's say Yaakov the father left over some oil of truma and also some wheat. So 50% of the oil is going to go to Reuven, 50% is going to go to Shimon, 50% of the wheat is going to go to Reuven, 50% of the wheat is going to go to Shimon. So now, when it comes to the oil, so what does Reuven do? Reuven the Chaver, he has to be concerned that maybe it's tameh. So he could burn it. Okay, fine. So now, here's the question. But why should he burn the oil of Truma? He can just wait until the next year, right? Meaning, they asked Rav Sheshes, going back to the beginning of the question, right? We had said in our Mishnah that the only time that you can accept Truma from an Amma Aretz is the grapes during the grape press season, the wine during the grape press season, olive oil during the olive press season. But if it's too late, so then he needs to wait to give it to the Kohen until the next year. So the question is, what if the Kohen nonetheless accepted it? Can he wait until the next year? So said Rav Sheshes, well, maybe let's take a look at this situation from the inheritance, where we're saying that Ruvain, the Am Haaretz, if he inherits this oil of Truma, so yeah, he can burn it, but he can't consume it. He can't even wait until the time of the wine presses and olive presses in order to consume it then. And therefore we see that you can't just take this truma stuff and say, well, I'll just wait, right? I mean, this truma of an Am Haaretz, you can't just say, well, I'll just wait until the time of the olive presses. That will not work. Okay. So now, and for the Gemara, b'davar she'einu mishtam, no, where am I? So am I yanichenu lo gas haba? So b'davar she'ein lo gas. So we could say, well, maybe it's talking about something that doesn't have a press. Right? Rashi says, for example, if you go and sheikhar tamarim, for example, if it's date beer, so it's not like grapes, it's not olives, right? So maybe the lach is talking about grape beer, date beer, and that's why you can't wait until the next press season, because there is no press season for date beer. Why don't you wait until the shalosh regalim? As Rashi says that tumas Am Haaretz is not relevant on the festival. Well, maybe it won't last that long. Maybe it'll sort of go bad before the festival. So, alright, fine. What do you want me to tell you? So, okay, so I guess it's not necessarily conclusive. Maybe it's possible that if it would be able to preserve till the festival, or if it was wine, or if it was oil, something that has a press season, maybe he would be able to wait until the press season. So it's inconclusive from that brisa to say, right? We're not conclusively able to say from that brisa that he would be unable to save it until the next press. All right, fine. What am I going to tell you? So now the Mishnah had said that if the Am Haaretz says that he put into the mixture, right, that with the truma he also put some kodesh, so we said, well, then he's believed. So it says the Gemara, I'm sorry, 1 second. So then he's believed because since he's believed for the kodesh, right? We said that he's believed for kodesh all year long. So once he puts a revius of kodesh into the truma, so then he's believed for the kodesh, so he's believed out for this mixture as well. All right, fine. Tanan Hasam, we learn in a Mishnah, Modim Beishami V'Sillel, that both Beishami and V'Sillel agree, Shebodkin La'osi Pesach and Bodkin La'ochle Truma. Okay. So say both Beishami and V'Sillel that we can check when it comes to Korban Pesach, but we don't check when it comes to eating Truma. What does this mean? My Bodkin, what's this checking thing? So as we've seen a few times in the past, that a person can just kind of blow around in a beis hapras and continue. Let's go weiter for a second. Mishmei de Ula Amar says Reb Chia bar Abba in the name of Ula. Beis hapras shenidosh tahor. That a beis hapras that's been like sort of walked on a lot is tahor. What friends, who remembers what a beis hapras is? Beis hapras is like a field that there was a dead body in the field, but the field was then plowed, and now we don't know where the dead body is. It must be scattered throughout the field. So the thing is, in order for a corpse to be metame be'ohel, right? But if you like stand over it, or if you're in a house with it, so you have to have an olive's worth of the flesh of the corpse, or if it's just bones, well then the majority of like the spine or something like that. But just a regular bone, so it's only mitami b'maga uv'masa, right? If you touch it or if you carry it, and therefore, since in this field there was a dead body, but the field was kind of plowed through, so the concern is really just that not about tumas ha'ohel, right? Not that you're going to step over a dead body and become tummy tumas ha'ohel. No, rather the concern is that you might move a bone. Maybe you'll step on a bone and then it'll become tummy, right? Tumas hesed, right? Because you will have moved the bone of a dead body and then you will become tummy. So now the solution is again, since we don't have to be concerned about making an ohel if you step over the body, because it's the field was plowed and we don't know where the parts of the body are. So what you could do is you could just kind of just be careful. Essentially, you could blow, right? Right? A person can just kind of blow on the ground, make sure that there's no bones over there, and then walk through it, right? And said Rabbi Chia bar Abba, in the name of Ula, that that if a lot of people have walked there, and now whatever was there was just kind of like compacted into the ground, so you're not going to be moving anything. So that would be tahor, that would be acceptable when it comes to a beis ha-pras. Okay, fine. So now a beis ha-pras is really only tamei midrabanan. That but the rabbis say that we don't want you to go into a beis ha-pras. So the osei Pesach, when it comes to the Korban Pesach, right, we said that both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that both can osei Pesach, that when it comes to the Korban Pesach, right, if you need to go to Yerushalayim to offer a Korban Pesach and there's a Beis HaPras in the way, so you'd be allowed to just blow bones out of the way, make sure that there's no bones there, whatever, and then walk through and then go and do your Korban Pesach. Because Lo Amidu Devreim B'Makom Koris. The rabbis did not want to interfere with Koris, right? You have to bring a Korban Pesach. If you don't bring a Korban Pesach, you're chayiv Koris. And therefore the rabbis are not going to say, we don't want you to walk through a Beis HaPras, therefore you can't offer your Korban Pesach. No, the rabbis are going to say, don't worry about the Beis HaPras, just blow around, make sure there's no bones that you're going to step on and become tamei, and then Gesund Heit, you can go to Yerushalayim and offer your Korban Pesach. Le'ochlei Truma, however, when it comes to eating Truma, which, there's no deadline for eating Truma, if you walk through, right, so Amidu Devreim B'Makom Misa, right, so when it comes to Truma, so the concern is, if you eat the Truma when you're in a state of Tumah, so then you're going to be, Tamei, Michayev Misa B'dei Shamayim. So in that case, the rabbis were willing to instate their halacha, right, their rabbanon, that if you go through a beis hap, right, that they're saying, what did we say? We said beis hap. Wait, where the heck am I? Dang it, I got lost. Right, we said. Right, Tananosa Modem Beisham Beisil Shabot can lo say Pesach ve'ein boat can lo say Truma. Right, that kilu, when it comes to the Korban Pesach, okay, so just blow your way through the Beis HaPras and then go and offer your Korban Pesach, because they're not going to mess with kares. Kilu, if you don't offer your Korban Pesach, then you chayiv kares, and therefore they say, just blow your way through, make sure there's no bones, and then go weiter. However, when it comes to Truma, they say no, don't do that. Right, don't just blow through the Beis HaPras and then assume that you're tahara and go ahead and eat Truma. No, in that case, you'll have to assume that you are tamei and, get the Parah Aduma, day 3, day 7, right, the whole thing. Because over there, okay, so if you have to wait a week to eat Truma, it doesn't really make a difference. And therefore they'll say that you can't just blow your way through the Beis HaPras and then eat Truma. Fine. In fact, the Gemara Ibarilu. So now they ask the kasha. You ready for the kasha? Badak lepischo ma'ush yochel b'trumaso. So what if you have a guy who's going to offer his Korban Pesach, but he also l'maisi is a kohen and he's also got truma. So we said that you'd be allowed to blow your way through the Beis HaPras in order to go and offer your Korban Pesach. We said that. So the question is, if already we're saying that it works for Korban Pesach, and now you also have Truma, can we just say, well, if we're assuming already that it's working, at least for the Korban Pesach, so be able to eat your Truma. Kilu, if all you had was Truma, fine, so we say don't do it. But over here, you have to bring your Korban Pesach. You're already assuming that you were allowed to, that you could just blow your way through, and that's fine when it comes to Korban Pesach. So can we also assume then that just like it works for the Korban Pesach, it also works for the Truma? So Rabbi Bar Ula Omar, so says, no, did I skip? I skipped. So Ula Amar says Ula Badak lepischo muter lecho b'trumaso. Sure, that if he just blew his way through the Beis HaPras in order to be able to offer his Korban Pesach, so that works for Truma Oichid, for Truma as well. Rabbi Bar Ula Amar says Rabbi Bar Ula Badak lepischo, that if he checks the Beis HaPras to make sure there's no bones for his Korban Pesach, also lecho b'trumaso, he would not be allowed to eat his Truma. Amalei Sava. And then Amalei Sava, so then Sava, which the tradition is Eliyahu Hanavi, he says to Rabbi Bar Ula, Lo tiflo gale to Ula, Do not argue on Ula Titnan Kavose, because we have a Mishnah like him, Vim Amr Frashti L'Socha Revi'is Kodesh, that if he says that I put a Revi'is of Kodesh into the Truma Ne'aman, he is now believed. So, right, meaning we said that only during the time of the olive press and the wine would he be allowed to give wine and olive oil of Truma to a Kohen, not outside of that time period. However, we said if he just puts some Kodesh in there, well, then that kind of fixes it, because Kodesh can be offered any time of the year, can be given to the Kohen any time of the year. So in Alma, from there we see that once he's believed for the Kodesh, he's believed as well for the Truma. If he's believed for the Korban Pesach, so then he's also believed for the Truma. Now the Mishnah said Kade Yain v'Kade Shemen, right? The Mishnah had talked about containers of oil and containers of wine, and we said if it's meduma, which we were assuming means that some of it contains some chulin and some truma, so therefore he's only going to be believed during the time of the wine press and the olive press. So now Tana, we learned in a brayso, Eineh monin lo ala kankanim v'lo ala truma. All right, that an Amaritz is not believed on the pitchers, on the vessels, on the containers, and not on the truma. Okay, not for pitchers, not for truma. Now, kankanim demai, what exactly are these pitchers? Ikankanim de kodesh. If we're talking about pitchers of kodesh, right? If we're talking about pitchers of kodesh, well, migod mehemna kodesh, memenami kankanim. Kilu, if you have, wine that you're going to donate to the Beis HaMikdash. So, the wine, he's believed about the wine. So since he's believed, right, we said all year round he's believed about the wine. So since he's believed about the wine, so he should be believed about the pitcher as well. So, Ela kankanim de truma. Alright, so maybe we're talking about the vessels that the truma is in. But pshita, that's also obvious. Hashta truma lo mehemen, kankanim mehemen. If he's not believed about the truma, so then Mamela is not going to be believed about the vessels either. So when the brayso says that he's not believed about the vessel and he's not believed about the truma, so what exactly are these vessels? Doesn't seem to be vessels of kodesh, doesn't seem to be vessels of truma. So ela bireikonim de kodesh. Rather, it's talking about empty vessels of kodesh, right? So for example, you had wine of kodesh in the vessel. So we said that he's believed about the wine, but if you empty the wine out of the vessel, now you just have the vessel. So it's talking about the rekonim, the kodesh, the empty vessels from that had kodesh in them, uvishayu mosashana, the entire year round, uvimlein the truma, uvishas agitos, or the vessels that are filled with truma during the times of the wine press. That even though during the time of the wine press and the olive press he's believed about the oil and of the wine, nonetheless he would not be believed about the vessels, and sort of the Kohen would pour out the wine and the oil from there into a different vessel. Fine, Tnan, but one second, we're learning the Mishnah, Kada Yain, that when it comes to the vessels, the pitchers of wine, v'kade shemen, and vessels of olive oil, hamadumos, that are meduma. And we said that during the time of the olive presses and the wine presses, they'd be right. The vessels would be okay. So my meduma is the truma, and with the assumption, as we've been assuming, there was meduma. Meduma is chulin and truma mixed together, and we have to treat it like truma. And we're saying that even the kade yain v'kade shemen, right, even the vessels would be believed. So Amrei Devei Reb Chia Midemo is the Kodesh. So they say by the Beis Medrash Reb Chia, no, it's not talking about a mixture of chulin and truma. Rather, it's talking about a mixture of chulin and kodesh. In fact, the Gemara Mi'ika Dimua the Kodesh, is there such a concept of Dimua, of Meduma, when it comes to Kodesh? So Amid Rabbi Eloi b'Matayr is Tivlo l'Tomimenu Nisachim. Well, it's talking about when you have a fellow who has like oil that he's planning to donate to the Beis Hamikdash, so therefore we treat it as if the oil that like the part that he's going to be donating is like mixed in with that oil, and therefore since we can treat it like kodesh, and therefore even the jug, and therefore in the Mishnah when we say that the jug can be donated, you can trust him about the jug. So then that is that kind of meduma. It's meduma of kodesh and chulin. All right, sounds good to me. Kodem legito shivim yom. Okay, we said that we could trust him during the Amaretz during the time of the wine press, as well as 70 days prior. Kodem legito. Fine. So Amar Abai says Abai Shmamina. We learn from here. Dino, that is a rule. De ilave arisa, that it is upon the sharecropper, the mitrach agulfe, to be careful with the vessel, shivim yomin mikamim matzarta, for 7 days prior to the pressing. Alright, fine. Sounds good to me. That already 7 days before before the press, then the pressing, you should already be starting to get all the vessels and stuff in order. Okay, friends, that was Daf Chafev Masechta Hagiga. So the main idea of today was comparing Kodesh and Truma in the context of donating it to a Kohen, right? That in that sense, actually, Truma is more stringent than Kodesh, in that Truma can only be donated to the Kohen, right? That an Amaretz is only trusted about Truma during the times of the olive press and the wine press, but not the rest of the year. Whereas by Kodesh, the Amaretz is believed the entire year. The Mishnah had pointed out that when it comes to Kodesh, we're specifically talking about in Judah, in Yehuda, that they're believed all year round. So the Gemara asked, well, what about the Galil? What's wrong with the Galil? So we say, well, the problem with the Galil is that there's a strip that separates Yehuda and the Galil, and that is from the lands of the nations, and therefore it's considered tameh, and nobody would be able to bring wine or oil from the Galil to the Beis Hamikdash, because Memela it will become tameh. The Gemara says, well, why not just put it in a box, and that will be like it's in its own oil and it won't become tameh. So we say, well, there's machlokas between Rebbe and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, regarding if a movable oil is considered an oil. Rebbe says no, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says yes, and this Mishnah is like Rebbe, therefore you'd be unable to transport the wine or the oil from the Galil to Judah. We had an interesting question that the Mishnah had said that so the Amaretz can only give Truma to the Kohen during the time of the wine press and the olive press. Outside of that time, then the Kohen cannot accept it. But what if the Kohen did accept it anyways? Does it work? So we wanted to say that maybe it doesn't work because we had a situation where you have Yaakov the Amaretz, who his children Reuven the Chaver and Shimon the Amaretz inherit him, and we say that if Reuven the Chaver inherits like some liquids that are Truma, so he has to burn it. He can't just wait until the time of the pressing. But we said that maybe it's specifically talking about date beer, that you can't that there is no time of pressing it anyways. Okay, fine. The Mishnah had said that if the Amaretz puts some Kodesh into the Truma, so then he could be believed, because since he's believed about the Kodesh all year round, so he could say Memela, if there's Kodesh with the Truma, so he could be believed about that. So then that got us into an interesting discussion about a Beis Hapras. A Beis Hapras is a field that a dead body has been plowed through. That field that had a dead body, the field was plowed, and now we don't know where the dead body is. So midrabanan, you shouldn't walk through that field. Now we say that what you can do is you can just kind of blow your way through it. Blow on the ground, make sure there's no bones that you're going to be moving, that you're going to be stepping on. We say that when it comes to doing the Korban Pesach, you'd be allowed to just blow your way through the field, and that's fine, because the Korban Pesach, if you don't offer it, you chayiv kares, so the rabbis aren't going to mess with that. But when it comes to Truma, however, they say that if you blow your way through the Beis Hapras, then you're going to have to assume that you're tameh, because in that case, like, okay, so if you don't eat the Truma, you don't eat the Truma, right? It's not like you chayiv kares, right? Meaning, the problem over there is that if you eat the Truma in your tummy, so you actually chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. So we say, look, just don't eat the Truma right away. In the meantime, sprinkle Efer Paradum on yourself and become tahor, and then you will be able to, and only then eat the truma. And then we got to an interesting question of what if you blew your way to the Beis HaPras because you were offering the Korban Pesach, but you also have truma? Do we say that since it works for the truma, for the Pesach, it works for the truma as well? Ula said yes, it works. Rabbi Bar Ula says it does not work. Eliyahu Navi visited Rabbi Bar Ula and said you should listen to, I assume your father Ula, that since blowing through the Beis HaPras works for the Korban Pesach, works for the truma as well, and therefore we see as well that just like by the Kodesh, he's believed about the Kodesh, then he's also going to, if he says that he put some Kodesh into the Truma, so he's believed about the whole thing, the Kodesh, the Truma as well. And then we had a Brisa, right? Well, our Mishnah had said that when it comes to the vessels as well, so the Amoritz is believed if there is Meduma in there, so then he's believed about the vessels. We initially wanted to assume that Meduma is Truma and Chulin mixed together, and therefore we're saying that not only is the Amoritz believed about the Truma, but also about the vessels. Now, we had a Brisa that says that he's not believed about the vessels. So we said that is either talking about Kodesh that you poured out of the vessel, and now it's just the vessel that had Kodesh in it, or it's talking about that when you have Truma, and we say that the Amoritz is believed, but he would not be believed about the vessel. Now, however, our Mishnah had said that he seems to be believed about the vessel when there's Meduma in there. Meduma is Chulin and Truma, and we have to treat it like Truma. And we're saying that you're nonetheless believed about the vessel as long as it's during the time of the olive press and the wine press. So we want to say that actually it's not talking about Meduma of Truma, it's talking about Meduma of Kodesh, and that is why he's believed. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Friends, that was the Daf Chaf Hey of Masechta Hagiga. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.